turn over the webinar microphone to Christi Gilhoi.
Thank you, Connor, and hello, Laura. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of a busy day. Today, we are talking about recognition and specifically why it's the most underutilized tool in your tool belt, sort of the Swiss Army knife. We're going to go through some research. We're going to spend most of the time in some interactive dialogue with all of you as best we can, turning things into ideas that you can use across the employee journey.
All right, so quick roadmap here. Christi gave you a preview into that. First, we'll look at this connection between recognition and motivation based on Awardco's original research. And then we'll spend most of our time talking about how you can activate recognition across the employee journey. And we really want it to be interactive, and we have live polls for you. There'll be a lot of idea sharing. So there are also some worksheets. If you'd like to grab those, you can use the QR code that's there on the screen and also down, I think, in the notes of this webinar as well. So as we get started here, a quick poll. So I think a poll will be popping up on the screen for you. In the last 3 months, have you been recognized for, meaningfully recognized for good work at your company? Please respond yes or no to the poll.
All right. A little split, a few more folks recognized than not. And I liked that we said meaningfully because it left something up to interpretation, because there is something that's personal about recognition. I'd like to see this higher since many of you are in charge of running recognition programs, but this is what we see in a lot of companies. So it also depends on what field you're in. And so we've done some research at Awardco about how recognition shows up by industry. So we were about 50-50 split here. As you can see, by industry, we definitely see more of this in the financial services and the tech space. And I think that's because a lot of these organizations have been earlier to the research and maybe some of the programs of recognition. And then as you go down to lesser recognitions, you see people in education, healthcare. And I always feel some extra intensity about this because these are the people taking care of our kids and our aged parents and us when we need it. So definitely would like to see it more than just north of 50%. And that's why Laura and I are here to talk about our passion for this topic. So as we think about recognition and motivation, we've done some research on this, but we'd like to have you think about the connection between motivation, all the things that fire you up at work, and then recognition. And so we wanted to know what this connection was. So we did some research. And from this data, it was very clear that there's a hand-in-hand connection between motivation and recognition. So we want to run through that. This original research is from Awardco, and it links how we can all do our highest and best and really move to that place of firing all cylinders. But underneath it, and hopefully all of you can think about this as we go through the motivations, why do you make an effort at work? And it could be more than one reason.
Okay, I'm trying to fix, I think somebody mentioned in the chat some scratching. I think that's my microphone and I'm trying to fix that. So my apologies. Christi, feel free to jump in if it gets to be too much. So I'm gonna run through this research. We were really curious to find out what motivates people. So we did some research with 2,000 responses across the US and the UK and across a wide mix of industries. And this was the structure of the study. We wanted to know what were the different recognition practices, the mode. So maybe it's the email, a shout out if you're using an award platform, the frequency, weekly, annually, who it's coming from. Is it coming from a peer, a manager, a leader? And then on the other side, we wanted to look at the employee outcomes of recognition. So what impact it had on engagement, intent to stay, inclusion, and well-being. And we were chasing the question, what should organizations be doing on the recognition side to actually move the needle on those outcomes? So we measured and confirmed 7 distinct motivation types. And I'm going to go through these quickly because we really want to get to this dialogue with you. So first is the material reward. We pulled base pay out of this equation. We treat that as just a given. We're looking at here what unlocks that discretionary effort beyond a salary. So that could be a more prestigious job title, maybe job security, a better quality of life. Next were expectations. These are your expectations from colleagues at work, that healthy pressure, not wanting to let your colleagues down and wanting to be respected by the people that you work with every day. Then there's those expectations from friends and family. I think we all know what that is. That is similar to the expectations from your colleagues, but just at home. Next is contribution, and this is the desire to really feel useful, to pull your weight, to be a part of something at work. Then ideology, when you're really bought into the purpose of what you're doing, when your values align with the values of your company. Then achievement, this is the effort for you're making the effort so that you can experience that satisfaction of accomplishing something, or maybe a lot of people like to exceed expectations, or maybe we have something to prove. And finally, just enjoyment, just because it's fun. We want to do things and put in an effort because the work itself is meaningful or interesting or fun. Over to you, Christi.
So thanks for going through those, Laura. I really found this interesting that there's a different grouping of motivators, and sometimes they're intrinsic and sometimes they're extrinsic. And I know as parents and teachers, sometimes we hear, well, intrinsic is better, that it should be driven from the inside. But truth be told, we're also driven by things from the outside, pressures and achievement, and by our colleagues. So these sort of map half intrinsic and half extrinsic. And so it is that balance of those internal motivators coming from within the employee to those external motivators coming from the team, your family, and the work colleagues that you have. All right, so we took those 7 motivators and then we did a factor analysis to figure out when you have various ones of those firing or not firing, what kind of profiles do those make at work? And so we wanted to look at this because we wanted to see how that sorted people into where they were on the spectrum from completely checked out on the left-hand side, actively demotivated, to that place where we all would like to be. And hopefully many of you have been in various roles, which is that firing on all cylinders. And what we found is that people are across the spectrum. On the left-hand side, you have that of this group. We looked at about 17% of them actively demotivated. Sort of nothing is lighting up, right? They don't feel particularly connected. They don't feel particular passion intrinsically. Maybe they're not driven by the ideology of their company. They're pretty checked out. And we all have seen this in our workplaces, especially working in HR. Then you have the disconnected. They're starting to have some things fired up in terms of what drives them to work. That's about 14% of the people who answered our research. And then you get into that obligated group. I've got to go to work. I've got to make money. I just do the job because I'm obligated. As you move into that bought-in category, the 19%, that's when you really start to see those intrinsic drives starting to fire up. I like what I'm doing. I'm aligned to the values. And then finally, that bought in and firing on all cylinders. And sometimes this looks like a wheel. Sometimes it looks like a flower. But this is that great place to be when your internal drive and the company you're working for and your values all align. So any given moment, your organization are holding these groups of people all at once. And realistically, you can't move everyone from all the way left to all the way right. Sometimes it's job fit, sometimes it's circumstance. But the real question is, how can you move people incrementally? How can you start to move people from disconnected to obligated to bought in, and hopefully move as many people from the left side to the right side?
All right, so if we want to move people, we have to know what causes what. Is your motivation profile innate within you, or is it caused by your environment? Can we move people from that obligated group over to the right side? And we tested that in both directions. What we found is that the relationship was the strongest in this direction. Recognition drives motivation more than the reverse. So that's a really big implication, because that means that recognition isn't just a sign of a healthy work culture, but it's actually a reliable intervention to help increase motivation. And that's what we all want, right? We want to increase motivation and increase engagement in our people. So we can do that with recognition.
And even in this group, Laura, 47% of folks not feeling meaningfully recognized. Sometimes we think, well, the top performers, they get the recognition. But I think we want to flip that script. And that's why I love that it's research backed, is that if you put those recognition practices into play, you can actually help people feel more motivated and fire on all cylinders. So we didn't just identify those motivators. We looked at recognition along that spectrum, right? What's happening with people who are demotivated? What's happening in organizations where people are firing on all cylinders? Or what's happening to those individuals? So for you folks, those folks who are over 50%, interested to know what's happening for you in the workplace. And as organizations layer in more channels, more modalities, more ways for people to feel recognized in those big ways and also in those day-to-day ways, they're more likely to start to fire up from the demotivated to the obligated to the bought in. And that overlayering onto these profiles is really where the magic happens. Now, like Laura said, it's not everyone, it's not overnight, but consistently layering on. And some of us, if we've been in HR, we're like one-on-ones with managers, really important. It is important, but that really is the foundation and may not move the needle. Even if someone's actively demotivated, they could be working with their manager one-on-one. It's about that consistent layering. How do we recognize people? Do we catch people doing something good here? Do we call out good work when people go above and beyond? Do we have recognition from peers, from senior leaders, from managers? Is it coming at various levels from the organization? And that's what starts to move people from the left into the right. So this is where we move from theory, sort of what motivates people, how do those people map to different groups, to application. And I know from these webinars in the past, people are really looking for actual tools, right? Or ideas. And we're hoping that you can help co-create with us today. We have clients that are actively designing recognition at these different touch points, not just rewarding it after the fact. So that's really important, that this happens along the way, and that it can be an intervention, not just sort of a acknowledgement at the end.
So the framework for the exercise today. First, we want you to be thinking about what is your current state? What are those programs and touch points, traditions that already exist? Where might there be some dissatisfaction or room for improvement? What are you dealing with today? Then we want you to share that with us and the rest of the group here. And with that, you'll be thinking about your future state, right? If there were no constraints, how would you design a best-in-class recognition experience across every stage of the employee journey? And hopefully, again, with these ideas that you all will share, then we'll have lots and lots of things to pull from. So we'll use a framework that we, for the employee journey from hire to retire. So thinking about, how there are just so many ways to recognize from the moment someone joins your company until the moment they say goodbye. So first, of course, hire, when they're joining the organization, how are you recognizing and celebrating them? Engage, we're looking at, now someone's a part of your company, and what are just those everyday ways that you recognize one another? What's the day-to-day look like? And grow is when they've been with you for a while and they're starting to expand their reach and grow their career. How do you recognize that? Celebrate can be both company milestones and celebrations, personal milestones and celebrations. This is where we see a lot of activity in companies. This is probably the most common place where people do recognition. And then, of course, retire. We don't want to forget about that. We want to make sure that we recognize and sustain that connection with these people as they move on from the company. So the point here is really there's meaningful recognition opportunities across every one of these stages. And it's an opportunity to inspire and appreciate and engage with your people. So we're going to go stage by stage, and we have a live poll for each one. So in the poll, you'll only be able to pick one answer. There'll be a series of things that you may do, but pick the one that you feel is the most impactful or that you do the best, even if you maybe do some of the other things. And then if there is anything not on the list that you do, we want you to share that with us in the chat. So please drop anything in the chat that you don't see on the list. And this is how we'll just really come up with just a ton of great ideas together. All right. So now we'll get into the polls. And I think Bronson's going to help us pull up the first one. All right. Oops. I think we might be a little out of order here. We got retire. We're looking for hire, or we could go backwards. I always do that. There we go. All right. So first stage, hire. What do you do to recognize people when employees are hired? Again, you won't be able to pick more than one. You may do more than one, but pick the one that you feel is the most impactful or that is working the best for you. Here we have, maybe there's a welcome message from the CEO or from leadership in your company. A lot of people do branded swag. Maybe that's a kit. Maybe that's sent to their home. Maybe they get it on their first day. Onboarding milestones. So anything that you're recognizing, along the way as they're doing certain tasks, and then carrying that on through the 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, not just forgetting once they've gotten in the door, right? And then the last one is embedding recognition into your onboarding program. So making sure that the new hires have the tools from day one. How do you recognize? What should that look like? What's the culture here around recognition? So please pick the one that resonates most with you, that you do the best. And then please, if we've missed anything or anything else that you do, you want to expand on any one of these, please drop it into the chat.
I really like this one because I feel like there's such an opportunity when someone comes on board to show them how recognition shows up in the company culture. It's like this moment in time where you get to introduce folks to how you run the airline, right? So this is one of my favorite categories. I'm interested to see what people say. If there's, a sweatshirt is great, a mug is great, a notebook is great, but also interested to hear if there are things that we don't have on the board that people use when they bring new employees on board.
Oh, I love this one. I think we can bring that results up now if we can, Bronson, on that so we could see the totals. But in the chat, I see that David mentioned that branded swag is a great way to initiate company affiliation and identity. So remembering those individuals who are part of an acquisition or joining the companies maybe in different ways. That's a really good one.
That's great. Hi, David Clark. Nice to see you on board. Oh, looks like swag for the win. Swag is harder than it looks, right, Laura? Sending international swag. So for those of you who do this in your company, hats off to you. It's way harder than it looks, and it's really important to people. And if they get the wrong size shirt, you definitely hear about it. Welcome lunch. That's nice. That happened to you in one of your companies, Laura. I remember that.
Yeah, that was a really special time when there was the orientation session, and then at the break at lunchtime, all the managers for everyone who was in the room were lining the hallway, waiting for the new employees to come out. That was a really nice way for everybody to be together.
Did you see Teresa's? I really liked that. At a milestone at the end of the year, and then people get a day off. We forget that not everything has to be monetary. If you've seen Laura and me before, we are such proponents of non-monetary time, access, training, so many other ways. So while we do all love to get something, a gift, a tangible thing, I love the idea of time. That's wonderful.
Time. Love a day off. All right. I think we might have caught for now, at least, any of the additional kind of other things that were mentioned in the comments. So I think we can move on to the next poll. So the next stage in the employee journey, this is engage. This is really that day-to-day recognition, that how are you doing, just the everyday contributions. So that peer-to-peer appreciation, how do you enable people to recognize each other? Christi, feel free to jump in on some of these. I know you like the manager recognition.
I do. I mean, even thinking about this group here, if people don't feel like they're getting those day-to-day contributions, you could never recognize too much. You can't overdo it if it's meaningful. And so sometimes this is where we see a dip, right? We forget to call out the good work day to day. We love nominations. I know Laura's done a lot of blogging on nomination programs, and when you see your name in the company award or you get to fly into a special event, that can be magical. But also at the other end, just informal shout outs. I know in several companies where Laura and I have worked, we start the meeting with a little praise barrage at the beginning, saying something nice about each person in the room, right? Not forgetting to call out the good things. And then we've got incredible stories from people in patient care, customer care, whether it's retail or hospitals or night shifts, that are getting that external recognition, those unsung heroes. So interested to know, in your organization or your company culture, what do you find the most valuable? What do you think has the biggest impact in this category?
Well, I did notice Paula in the comments say none, which that's not uncommon actually, to say, we're not doing any of these things. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, Paula, but if it was, it's not uncommon. And that's what we want to do here, is help you come up with some ideas to implement. And we'll have some good ideas that you can start small. And Christi mentioned the shout outs in meetings. One of the practices that I think is just really a great starting point to build a recognition culture and really effective is to start every meeting with a recognition. Whether that's a small team meeting or a large company-wide all hands meeting, starting every meeting with some form of recognition can be really powerful. And it's a really powerful, again, non-monetary way to build that culture of recognition in your company. So really great practice to put in place, and it's snowballs. That's one of the amazing things about recognition, is how it has this snowball effect.
Oh, I love Paula's this idea of favorite things. I know Awardco has a profile that you can fill out, and you can say, I like coffee or Skittles, or I don't like public recognition, right? Making it personal for someone, because you don't want it to land wrong. I think obviously having none just makes me so sad, and that could be a cultural piece, right? People don't believe in it. We pay people well, we give them benefits. Why should we recognize them too? Well, there's so much research that recognition from managers and leaders, or these nomination certificates, that can really move the needle on engagement scores at your company, morale, retention. And then I think one of the more interesting things, and Laura, we've talked about this a lot, is peer-to-peer recognition. When Laura and I recognize each other on a team, that may not change the way we feel about the company we work for, but it helps that well-being and helps us feel less burnt out. If I know Laura's pulling hard, hours after work, and I'm getting up early and doing things, we feel connected and in the trenches together. And that can really help with that burnout or well-being. So different levers, right? So if you're doing one, but not the other, you may be getting the benefit from engagement, but maybe not from burnout. So there's a lot of different ways to do this.
There's some really cool things in the chat. I love these. Keep them coming. One is having a Teams channel to use for shout outs. The project manager will usually recognize members of their teams. The other one here, Carla says we do monthly nominations, and she prints out a fun certificate for each nominee and the quote from the specific nominator so they know who it came from. I love that. Christi mentioned that I've been doing a series of blogs on nominations, and one of the things I'm really, really passionate about is making sure that everyone who gets nominated gets recognized. We sometimes when we do a nomination program, only a couple of people can get that final pinnacle award, but everyone can be recognized. The first stop of being recognized in that is just being nominated in that program. So I love that you're doing that for everyone. There was another one here.
I want to answer Cody's, but I think that's in the next poll, but I'm excited to answer Cody's. I think it's kind of a cheeky response, but I think we can definitely address that.
Yes.
Verbally is great, publicly, nominations, Teams channel. Did we catch them all? The connective tissue, I like that. I like that connective tissue, those little spider webs between people.
I actually love this. Valerie mentioned that people are recognized verbally in front of the entire team during the Monday morning meeting. But then sometimes if someone comes up with a really great idea for a process, they rename that process with the person's name. So they have the KC method for mounting certain metallographic samples. I don't know what that is, but it's very cool to have the KC method. I think I've never heard that one. That's so fun.
When we worked together in High Tech, Laura, there was that patent wall, right? That was the formal version of that. But I love the Shanley nomination program. I think maybe we'll steal that. So thank you. We're learning too. I think this is great. I do think the public versus private, right? Some people don't want their names shouted from the rooftops. And I think that's important with that intake form, right? To just find out, to understand what's meaningful. Maybe they just want an email on the side, or maybe you just drop some coffee at their desk. So thinking about what's meaningful to people, in relationships, we say love language. Maybe there's a recognition language that you learn on your team. Ooh, Jenga nominations. We're stealing that one too, Emily. There's a prize attached, right? Gamification. I love that. We haven't mentioned that, this gamification piece. That's great.
Oh, that's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's so fun. Cool. All right. I think we got all the ones that were in the chat. So let's move on to the next poll, the next phase of the employee journey. This is what we call grow. How do you recognize career progression and growth? So people have been with your company for a little while, and they're starting to reach out and do more. Do you want to go over these, Christi?
Sure. Sometimes there's not promotions available when people start. So sometimes it's important to recognize those other things, lateral moves, completing a training, maybe getting a certificate, getting a course, increasing your skill set. When people do get a promotion, it's nice to celebrate that. Sometimes that's delicate, but it's really important to celebrate when people move up, especially if they're moving into a managerial position from an IC. It's really good to highlight that, because oftentimes that's a result of great work leading up to that. Highlighting things that you don't always call out that are less formal, like mentoring. There are people who mentor our early career folks, and sometimes I do that quietly in an informal way. So shedding some light on that can be super helpful, and to make sure that those people are seen for adding additional value outside of their role. Celebrating leadership behaviors. I know that when Laura and I have set up programs, even behaviors that were really challenging, we're trying to get those numbers up. We have done some recognition around those so that people know what collaboration looks like, or they know what ownership looks like. So that can be a piece. We often work in our own teams, but there are times when we have to pull together with other teams, payroll, engineering, sales, that office in Frankfurt, Germany. Maybe it's that cross-functional initiative. And then this group has been wonderful in more creative ideas. So please share others in the chat. Laura, you always say, don't just cheer at the end of the game, right? It's important to cheer in the middle of the game. And I think we miss that sometimes. And I keep going back to, it makes me sad. Half of you haven't gotten meaningful recognition. We need it, on the regular, right? On a consistent basis, just to have that fuel, right? To keep going.
Yeah. I still just get a kick out of that analogy because, the idea of waiting to the end of a soccer game, baseball game, football game or whatever, just sitting the whole time and waiting to the end to cheer just is so ridiculous, right? So why would we do that at work? We don't want to, I think a lot of us do fall into that trap of waiting to the end of the project, right? And then we'll celebrate. So looking at really finding ways to celebrate and acknowledge people along the way. The other thing that came to mind for me, in terms of growth is, we talk about Awardco, that the session here is sponsored by Awardco. Awardco is a software platform that enables recognition, right? And we really believe in that, and it really helps to seamlessly enable a recognition culture. But really, a recognition culture is built around all those things that you do. So within, if you have a platform or not, and if you have a platform, those things that also happen outside of it. So similar to what we talked about earlier, like those, kicking off meetings with recognition. In this case, in growth, messages to email, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a Teams or Slack message to announce promotions. I mean, how many times have you bumped into somebody, oh, you got promoted? I had no idea, right? So making sure that we're capturing that moment and honoring that moment and celebrating those people, and announcing those things formally.
Anonymous in your cool sunglasses said, we don't do this. We have some ad hoc certificates, and boy, do we find this, right? There are people, engines of recognition in your organization who just do this naturally. They may just have that sort of inclination, but it's maybe hard to have it in a federated way, in a way that's equitable, in a way that's scalable, in the way you can actually measure for your leaders. So we definitely see this, people who have smaller celebrations or ad hoc or a certificate on a wall, but it's not a cohesive structure. Rachel said, looking for ideas. We only recognize promotions, but those are limited. That's tough, right? You have limited promotions and people wanting to go for those promotions. And if they don't get those, there's often the sense that maybe, I'm not growing. And so it's really important to change that message to, could be stretch, could be an opportunity to go to a conference or a training. It could be skip level meetings or that mentoring we talked about. So great call out, Rachel. I think this is one where people do not systematize it or make it automated or do not think about all of the ways to do this. And they get kind of stuck on just that promotion or that job movement.
All right. Well, keep the ideas coming if you have more ideas for growth. Well, let's move on to the next one. Celebrations. So how do you recognize celebrations or personal milestones? So in this area, we think about service anniversaries. Oftentimes we find at companies that if they do anything, they're doing this. They're recognizing years of service. It's kind of where the industry started. So, thinking about how do you recognize service anniversaries? Employee Appreciation Day or week, or I've even seen a month. That's something that you can anchor on. That's the first Friday in March. So you can anchor on that. Holidays and global observances, things that are important to your company. Wellness challenges, celebrating people who are participating in, maybe it's a walking challenge or a meditation challenge, recognizing their participation and success in that. Birthdays, of course, we will talk about birthdays, and that was in the comments as well. But that's a kind of a low-hanging fruit. Of course, people have to want their birthday to be shared, and we would never ever share the year, only the day. So but of course, people can opt out of that. Not everybody wants to celebrate their birthday. And then life events, that's people have, things that are happening for that person, but outside of the company, having a baby, a new home, maybe they're graduating from getting an advanced degree, some things like that. What do you do? And share in the chat anything that we missed.
Jennifer put, we only do 25-year service celebrations, and we've also done presentations on this. We're moving so quickly as millennials, Gen Z come into the workforce, people aren't staying that long. So if that's where you're recognizing, there's so many opportunities before that, right? And that may be a long-standing tradition in Jennifer's company, like it's kind of that model of the gold watch, but then you're missing all of that time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So we have seen a lot in the industry of moving from those traditional 5, 10, 15, and really pulling it into where are you losing your folks? Is it at 18 months? Maybe 18 months needs to be an inflection point. Or David said, we do it on their anniversary, but we also do it on Employee Appreciation Day, right? Trying to figure out those multiple touchstones. A lot of plaques and certificates, a lot of sort of those analog, tangible things, which can be great. For some people, those are meaningful. But I do find it interesting, right? We're so online and doing all of this in our lives online. I do wonder, and Laura and I've done this too, is sort of elevating some of those traditional things, if they're on your wall, to a way where more people can see and what you're doing, especially if you're an unsung hero. Monetary and non-monetary, David brought up again, important for non-monetary as well. It doesn't always have to have something with it. You can easily slip into entitlement if every time you get thanked for something, you get something that's money based, right? So really Laura and I talk about the muscle of recognition.
And on that note, on the non-monetary note, I want to circle back to service anniversaries and double down on that for a moment. I literally have a whole presentation on service anniversaries, so I could talk for a long time about this. But like Christi said, if we're waiting till 25 years to celebrate, that's awesome. And it's probably an amazing celebration that they get. But we're missing so many opportunities, again, sharing along the way every year. So, but knowing that it doesn't have to be a monetary recognition, but just honoring and acknowledging that person. I've been in many organizations that don't do an annual recognition. And, you'll hear people say, yeah, today's my 14-year anniversary. Well, if it wasn't one of those 5, 10, 15, like nothing happened. Nobody said anything to them. And that's such a missed opportunity. So just thinking about how can we recognize people every single year, even if it's not a big party or a big token gift. There's a huge opportunity there.
And definitely circling back to Cody, and absolutely applaud your caution. Laura and I worked with international companies, with works councils and privacy pieces. And so I think best practice is to ask someone if they want their birthday public or private. And as Laura said, this is only the month and the day, never publicizing, obviously, someone's age. But it's that fine line between, if you have no program, people may sit there and, like you said, Laura, it's their 14th anniversary or it's a milestone birthday and no one notices, right? So their personal and their professional lives are not connected or woven together. So having that birthday option where someone can say, yeah, I want my birthday to be publicized, what day it is. And I like getting that feedback, not necessarily something monetary, but just an acknowledgement and a celebration of them on that day.
There's a lot of really great comments coming in on these. There's a couple here. Sarah, peer voted employee of the year winners get a cash prize and 2 additional days off of PTO the following year. Love the days off. And then Josie talks about an additional day off after 5 years. So love that. Love the time off.
Lena said tokens. I love that. Ice cream tokens, coffee and snacks. I think that's really cool. So that's that combination of something tangible, but something that they can bring. I think that's great. Swag store credit. Postings, those are great. Sometimes, depending on how big your organization is, right? If we've worked in 50,000 person organizations, sometimes that'll be a scroll. So, but if you have a company culture where you can actually call that out, that's lovely.
Teresa brings up a really good point. She said put a posting out each month and put all the employees in that 1 month so that no one is really singled out. That's a nice way to celebrate too, if that fits with your culture, if people don't really like to be called out individually, but you're still celebrating them as part of the group that month. That's cool. Lots of really great stuff.
Laura, I just lost visual, so give me a second.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we can move on to the last and final poll, and that is retire. So this is something that often gets missed. I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't a lot of responses here, but thinking about, how do you recognize people and even sustain that connection when your employees retire? Do you have a formal celebration for them? Is there and maybe that's a company thing, or maybe it's a team specific thing. Is there a retirement gift, a parting gift that they receive? Do leaders in your company give an acknowledgement? Maybe there's an alumni network, something that they're invited to stay connected. And maybe, retire doesn't necessarily mean that they're at the end of their career. This could mean that they're just the end of their career at your company, but moving on to something else. We still want to stay connected with these people, have them carry a positive image of our company, and be promoters of our company. So keeping them connected and connected to other alumni, because a lot of times, right, people come bouncing back, and we want to stay connected with these good people.
I was going to say that we have boomerangs, right? We have people who go out, and there are returnships. So life is long. So it is really important to maintain those good relationships with people who left for another opportunity or may come back in a leadership position in the future. So I like how we're sort of loosely holding on to retire. Maybe it's advancement or becoming a fan, right?
Yeah. All right, let's see what those results are. And there's some great comments coming in. Farewell celebration, not surprisingly, the top, and followed by a retirement gift. That's nice to see people are doing that.
Teresa, that's incredible. There's actually a compensation piece giving them a month of pay. So smaller company, but that's a really nice and generous gift. Someone only had one person retire. Maybe they're doing all the things right. So, or they have a very early career company. Personalized photo book. I think that is really important. It's easy to forget if you've worked with different teams, if you've worked at different times in your life. We spend so much time at work. To have something you can bring home and show your family. I think that integration, or your friends, just to see what you've done in your professional life, can be really powerful.
Yeah, I received something similar, not for retirement, but it was a 10-year anniversary at a company, and they created a big framed photo that was like a collage of different photos of things we had done and just things that had happened along the way. And that was it's such a fun, I still have it, and it's really fun to look back on that. So doing something similar to that at retirement can be really special for someone. In Awardco, there's like a memory book, which is like a digital type of a book. You can also do these printed. I've seen the printed books that are very meaningful, something they can keep. That's a really neat one.
I love that.
What else here? Lots of celebratory lunch at their favorite restaurant, a gift. Seems pretty common.
I worked for a leader once who said we really do a lot more when people are leaving than we do sometimes when they're onboarding. And so I do wonder, right? I love celebrating people as they're heading out for their next chapter, but I wonder too, just that idea of putting it across the employee journey to make sure that people just entering a company also have a really good experience.
Yeah.
Love all the participation in the chat, the new ideas, the different company cultures, some people doing a lot, some people not doing very much. There's really a wide span of things going on in your companies.
Yes, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing these ideas. All right, Brenton, I think we can bring the poll down and we'll start tying things up. And then if there are any questions, you feel free to drop them in the chat as well as we're wrapping up. I'm going to pass through these little polls here. All right. So this is included in the handouts that you received that you can download. This is the full picture of everything filled in based on what we asked you in the polls. Of course, for reference, of course, we didn't capture those things all the great things that you mentioned in the chat. So if anything in the chat caught your attention or something that you want to try to implement, make sure to jot that down. We really hope that this discussion today gives you some additional ideas for expanding what you're doing across every stage. Like Christi said, we don't want to be just doing more when they leave the company than we've done during their whole tenure. So making sure that we're taking advantage of those opportunities all along the way.
And the fact that you all showed up means that you're interested in this topic, but we all struggle to show impact, right? Our leaders are going to ask, well, what's the research? Is this going to actually impact the bottom line, my business imperatives? So let's just cycle back to impact on one specific area of impact in terms of engagement, and that is celebrating these milestones. So in the same data study that we referenced earlier, we found there's an outsized impact in terms of the engagement score if you celebrate the birthdays. Again, just the date somehow publicly so that people are acknowledged. And then length of service. And as we said, length of service is changing, right? It's moving to more frequent, non-monetary earlier in the cycle. But when employees receive a length of service award, or if they know about it, or if it's there versus we don't have one or we don't know about it, some of you in the chat said you don't have it, huge delta in terms of engagement. You can see 78 versus 56. And the same with birthday recognition. And while we're cautious, Cody, about when we call it out, if you get people's agreement to do that, or if they want it public or private, having that call out changes the engagement score, self-reported, of 82% versus 57% without. So again, going back to all of you, if you had more recognition in your day-to-day, if you're getting called out for these moments that are really special to you, it does connect you more to your organization and make you feel seen, heard, and valued. So just bringing it back to the motivation that we talked about, where we started, right? Recognition is one of the clearest levers. It really is that Swiss Army knife that you can help bring people from the left to the right. It's easy to be in the fixed mindset of we just have unmotivated people because we have budget cuts or because of where the cycle is, but it's not true. It is a movable, changeable landscape. And we love this because we sort of had that as a gut instinct or an intuition, but it bears out in the research. You can move people from left to right, from demotivated or just firing up toward that firing on all cylinders. Can't do it for everyone. And it's not going to happen overnight, but by layering in these different recognition practices, which all of you helped us to co-create and talk about, that can start to move it into that place where you really want to be, that giving it your best at work. So we hope you walk away from this session with some more ideas. We have so much more in our research. We have so much more we would love to talk about, but wanted to give you a taste of the Awardco research, what we do as partners in the Center of Excellence for Awardco, and really loved the conversation. Wish we could be in person with all of you and excited to meet you when we can.
All right, so one last thing before we go. We want to end on practice, not just theory, not just talking about recognition, but actually doing it, practicing what we preach, really building that muscle of recognition. So what we ask of you to do right now, before you move on to your next task or your giant to-do list, which we all have, take 10 seconds. Really think of one person who you could recognize today, not just today, but now, from work, from home, any part of your life, it doesn't matter, but pull out your phone. I'm giving you permission. Pull out your phone and text them. Tell them what they did, why you appreciate them. And I think you'll see how much that really means to the person receiving it. And hopefully also you'll feel that impact too. So please do this today.
And for some of us, I always say this, for some of us, we had to learn this. I'm a Gen Xer. I didn't know about recognition when I came into the workforce. I didn't get a lot of recognition when I came into the workforce. So having to learn how to do this and being vulnerable enough to do that, to do the active recognition is so powerful. And recognize your manager, your leader. Some of the most powerful recognitions I've seen in a company environment went from the ranks to the CEO. Everyone needs to know, how am I doing? How is this landing? Is my communication working? And, your managers and leaders may not do everything right, but when they do something right, call them out. Tell them that they're doing something well, because Laura and I always say, what gets recognized gets repeated. Your personal life, your professional life, if they do something you want to see more of, quickly recognize that in the moment specifically. It really could be, like Laura said, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It's a practice.
And it creates such a snowball effect. So know that you are like the initiator of that snowball, because you're going to help them feel really good. And maybe they'll even then think, well, that was really great. I'm going to recognize someone now. So just know that you started that snowball.
And all of us in HR, we tend to be on that side of sort of the bystander effect with things when they go wrong. But there's also a glow. There's an actual measurable glow when you see other people getting recognized, right? It lights up the parts of our brain that feel good. So even seeing other people recognized is helpful to the sort of the greater good and the greater culture. So I think we're doing pretty well on time. We would love you to connect with us in person. Some of you we know, some of you don't. Many of you we would love to have a deeper conversation with. We have our contact info on the screen. Reach out if you want to keep the conversation going. If you want help thinking through sort of where on the journey you could use more help and support, or what's working really well, or how you take what's working well and make it even better, and how that fits in your total reward strategy. Doesn't have to be super expensive, but it does need to be intentional. We would love to talk with you and talk about your struggles and your big wins and celebrations in your companies. So I think we can open it up for a few questions. Bronson is our trustee behind the scenes partner on this program. So is there anything that's coming in, Bronson, that we haven't answered, or questions that we want to end with?
Great question here. Looking at the chat, and I think you hit most of them. There aren't any other ones that I think we might need to address, and given the time that we have, I really appreciate everybody's time and putting things into the chat. Christi, Laura, thank you both so much. And I think we'll end it by giving it back to Connor. I know we need to get that SHRM credit out, but thank you so much. And thank you all for your participation. This has been wonderful.